Right, hello everyone. You're all in the dark, I can't see you. I assume you're still there, still awake. Okay, let's see. Oh, no, already gone wrong. Oh, no. So, okay, so it's great to be here in Lyon. First time for me in Lyon, and it's great to be here at the first Blockchain Game Summit, giving the keynote. So who am I and why am I giving the keynote, I guess is maybe what you're asking. So I've been writing about games now for 20 years. I focus particularly on kind of the business side of writing. So I focus very much on company finances and kind of technology and kind of business aspects. I was a co-founder at a company called Steel Media, best known for Pocket Gamer. So for the last 5 years or so, I've run a website called pocketgamer.biz. So that's a B2B site talking about mobile games. And I guess many of you have come from the mobile game space as well. And what was interesting, say kind of 10 years ago, was mobile games were very, very small. And quite limited. And then something kind of big happened, free-to-play as a business model kind of came along. And games, fairly quickly in 5 years went from being a $0 billion market to what they are now, which is $50 billion of annual revenue. And they are, in fact, the largest category in the game space. So when I, a bit late to the game, first got involved in blockchain. So at the start of this year, the light bulb went on in my head, and I suddenly realized this could be a big thing, a transformative thing. And I do see blockchain as being the next big disruptor in a similar way to free-to-play, but in a slightly different way as well. Obviously, we have two different aspects, I think. When I look at the blockchain games sector, I see kind of technology, so a bit like the internet combining with the games industry, that had a big impact. I think that's bound to happen. Blockchain as a kind of infrastructure piece will come into games over the next 10 years or so. I guess what's more interesting, and I guess what we're focused on in this conference, is blockchain games as an individual kind of category. How will that develop? Will it develop? I guess we've seen a little bit with VR games that sometimes you have a good technology and good game experiences, but it doesn't always quite take off in the way you think. So here, I predict blockchain is the next great disruptor. Likelihood currently 80%. I don't think it's necessarily a guarantee. I think there's lots of things that we, or you guys as people who make blockchain games, have to think about. Just to say, my slide deck is going to be available on LinkedIn. So if you want the slide deck, find me on LinkedIn. And let's move on. Okay, so big scary market map slide. So this is now a little bit old because things move so fast in blockchain games. This is probably about 3 or 4 months old now. Something I put together with bit crystals. And I'm working on a new version now. It should come out fairly soon. But I think it's good to give us some sort of structure in how I'm going to kind of structure my talk, at least. So we obviously have a lot of games up here. There's over 500 blockchain games in terms of kind of dApps, so things running on Ethereum. That's the vast bulk of the industry at the moment, although that may change. We're starting to see EOS and Neon and other blockchains kind of coming to the fore. Underneath games here, I've got platforms. So platforms are an attempt to kind of build community and discovery around games. There's different approaches to doing that, and very early stages really for building platforms. That's a hard thing to do, but there's clear advantages in terms of kind of building community, and I'm going to talk a lot about community in this talk. Next, we have tools. So obviously we all know the problems with Ethereum, and obviously there's internal projects to fix that within Ethereum. But there's also a lot of kind of tech work going on, layer 2 technologies as they call them. I guess the best known is Loom here, but lots of other people working on side chains or however you want to call them. There's Zaya going to be talking, I think later on today, about their game channels. And it's all kind of broadly similar approach to taking gameplay and non-important transactions off the blockchain and just putting them back on when you need to. And that creates a much deeper experience. Obviously, at the moment, we're quite limited in terms of what blockchain games are. And then we're kind of down here. So the point of doing a market map for me was to simplify what was going on. I was, as a journalist, getting really confused about hearing all these companies, and I didn't really understand what they all did, so I tried to put this together. So I've kind of shoehorned companies into one category. Some people in the audience might be saying, well, you've kind of defined what my company does, and I may have done. But this is for me trying to get my head straight and try and think what companies were doing as their main business at the moment. So there's quite a lot going on in marketplaces, and I'm going to talk about items. It's a big, strong trend in the blockchain games sector is items, and marketplaces, as I'm defining them, are marketplaces for in-game items. So we have a bit of kind of historic companies coming in here. So we have, obviously in the past we've had a lot of trading of Counter-Strike skins, things like that. So we have Wax, which is the new project from OP Skins, and D-Market. So those are kind of bringing their ideas of trading kind of cosmetic items, bringing them to the blockchain. We have things like OpenSea. I know they're talking at the conference as well, who are more focused on kind of dApps and items from dApps, a more kind of just browser marketplace. And then we have some quite interesting ones here. So Gamer Token, they're talking as well, I think, over the next 2 days. And that's kind of coming from established PC publishers who are looking to retrofit game item marketplace into existing games. Distribution, as I'm defining it here, is much more about the kind of the game sales themselves. Obviously, distributors could do this kind of marketplace stuff in time, but this is the way I've kind of defined it. So this is stuff like Robot Cache and Ultra, which are, for want of a better word, doing kind of blockchain Steam approaches. So they're offering PC game developers, publishers, a better cut. So instead of a 70-30 cut, you may get a 85-15 cut or something maybe even better. But the real kind of issue here is resale of these games. So a gamer buys a game, and then when they finish with it, they sell it, they get some money back. The original developer also gets a cut. So much more about flexible business models. And there's a few also doing the same for mobile. So we have AppCoins and Moose Store and Alax, which are trying to do blockchain app stores for games. So the really interesting things, I think, here are down the bottom, really. So we have community. So community there's quite a lot of things going on here. There's quite a lot of different companies, and I think there's quite a lot of different business models. And I'm not entirely sure that all these companies know exactly what they're doing. But the interesting thing for community and why it's important is community is about building scale and about building engaged audience. And I think that's maybe in blockchain, that's something we don't think enough about. We're very much focused on technology, and we're not so much thinking about kind of expanding our user base. And obviously, that's what's going to take us from being a niche market into being a mass market. So I think a lot of these kind of community plays, if they haven't already, are ending up in esports. So the esports market is fascinating. I find it very interesting. But if you look at how the business model of esports, despite there being loads of millions of hours on Twitch and YouTube and all these big streamers and all this kind of big media coverage around esports, as a business, it's actually not that big. So it's less than $1 billion of revenue, and it's really broken as a business model. So unless you are owning one of the big esports games, so unless you're Riot with League of Legends, or unless you're Valve with Dota 2 or Activision Blizzard and you've built the Overwatch League very expensively, that's really, the money is flowing to those games companies. And of course, the esports teams that actually win these big tournaments. So if you think about kind of esports as a economy, basically there's quite a lot of money in there, $1 billion, but really the profit of that is flowing out to the top esports teams and flowing out to those players. It's actually much like soccer, like football. There's a lot of money in it, but it goes to the players. So it's very hard for smaller companies to build a sustainable business in esports. And this is where blockchain can come in. So blockchain is obviously all about building an economy that works for everyone in that sector. And obviously you have a token, you have a tokenized economy, and your most engaged fans gain that token, token gains more value. So I think there's a big opportunity here in esports for blockchain to come in and fix what is, in effect, a broken business model. So that's how I see the market anyway, at the moment. So when I was thinking about this talk, I was had a few goes at it, actually. It was quite a hard talk to put together. But I kind of came down to an idea about measuring success. So how do we measure success? Are we successful at the moment in the blockchain game space? And I kind of came up with 3 metrics we could use, and then I use that to then go on and discuss kind of where the market might go. So my first metric for measuring success is tokens. So I spend far too long creating graphs like this. So let's unpick this a little bit. So this is looking at the dollar values of all these game tokens. So there's 28 game tokens that I've tracked. I looked at their value against the dollar on the 1st of July, and then on the 20th of September. Obviously, there's been quite a lot of fluctuation during that period of time, as we all know, in the market. But the obvious thing here is 27 of these have lost value against the dollar. Not a great surprise. We have Ethereum here, lost 54% of its value. So we can't really see a lot of success being measured here. This is not, I think, because game token value could not be used as a metric for success, but clearly at the moment there's other things going on in the market. Should point out up here, one little token has been successful. So this is Reality Clash coin. And it's worth talking a little bit about Reality Clash. So it's a mobile game. It's not out yet, but it has, it's kind of coming to that point of being released. So there's kind of interesting momentum there. They ICO'd last year, raised $3.5 million. They've since released an armory where people can spend these coins buying limited edition guns. They're going to bring out a marketplace where people can start trading, and then the beta, I think, goes live at the end of this month. So there's kind of momentum around here. So this is kind of one example where we are kind of seeing that kind of momentum. And another graph. So this is 2018 year to date, so the 1st of January to the 20th of September. And again, scary negative figures here. Obviously, there's a bigger issue here. Again, Ethereum, I think, down 80%, Bitcoin down 57%, so much bigger market forces going on here. And blockchain games, as a fairly small part of the blockchain game sector, is clearly not kind of bucking those trends. Again, as Mana up here is doing less badly than other things. So Mana's an interesting project. It's the token for Decentraland. Decentraland is a very strongly supported community project, which is user-generated content, strong VR element, and lots of partnerships kind of being built around Decentraland. So in a sense, we are seeing some sort of relative success against the market. Obviously, why is that happening? Well, winter is coming. We're in this kind of crypto winter. And I do think when we look back at 2018, we'll see it as a very transitional year. Obviously, the end of 2017, we had this kind of big speculative bubble in cryptocurrency prices that burst dramatically, and we've been seeing the outcome of that throughout the year. Personally, you can see there, Michael Stipe. So I'm with Michael Stipe on this one. It's the end of the world as we know it, but I feel fine. I kind of think this kind of correction is needed. It's kind of long overdue. What we saw in 2017 was clearly unsustainable in terms of valuations and in terms of projects coming to market. There was lots of inexperienced teams, raising tens of millions of dollars on a white paper and a prayer, really. They couldn't build products. They didn't have an experience of building teams. And in a sense, it's no surprise that those projects are going away. I see 2018 as like a forest fire. So the deadwood's being burnt away, and we're being left with a fertile environment for really what happens next. And certainly the teams I talk to now who are starting up, I'm seeing serial entrepreneurs who've created companies, sold companies, created products used by millions of people, raised tens of millions of dollars in venture capital. So I see the future's being quite promising, despite what's going on with tokens. Okay, another measure of success we can look at, a bit more positive, funding. So here we have a graph. This is 11 blockchain game sector companies. And this is just publicly available data, so I can't judge for the veracity of it. But there's no obvious trend in terms of over the last 2 years how much money is being raised. So it's kind of roughly the same. There's not any big trends there. Obviously, the big trend is how people are raising this money. So in blue, we have 2017, the Wild West of ICOs. So all these, pretty much all these fundings were just public ICOs. I guess we all know, certainly people who are fundraising now know that public ICOs are pretty much dead in terms of raising serious amounts of money. They're probably still useful for building community and awareness, but we'll be looking at these ones in red, apart from actually these ones down here, which were early in 2018 and did public ICOs. These guys here are the interesting ones, really. And this is all VC money. So now we've gone back to the kind of the traditional way of raising money, which is VCs or kind of institutions or kind of private funds private crypto funds. So there's this one here, Chile's $65 million. That's an esports play. Don't really know too much about that. These ones here, this is Cocos, $40 million. So Cocos, the team behind that, they've done the Cocos 2DX mobile engine and been very successful, 1 million users, so easy for them to raise money. We have Theta, which is a kind of traditional Silicon Valley startup doing video delivery, looking at game streaming. And then we have, this is High Fidelity, which has actually raised a lot of money over the last decade, but this is its Series D round that was to bring its project, which is a kind of VR multiverse, to the blockchain. So still money being generated here. We're not really seeing any return on investment yet. So we can see a kind of clear trend here. If you were early, you did well. So BitCrystals, 2015 return on investment. We can see over, I think, getting on for 500%. But the majority of the trend stuff down here is negative. And even in 2016, something like First Blood, an esports company, raised $6 million. over the last 2 years, we've not seen any real return on investment there. Again, Decentraland up here, done very well. We have Engine, again, talking in the conference, starting to build momentum around their, I think they're calling it a multiverse, a kind of a item-based economy. But all the ones down here, so everything in 2018 is massively under the water because of the bigger trends in the industry. And this is not to say, some of these projects I think are quite good. I quite like Wax and Theta and Loom and Referium. They all have their own good business models. They're all in their own way making progress, but we're not seeing any kind of positiveness in terms of this kind of return on investment idea. So success, yes in funding, not really yet, still too early in terms of returns. So let's look at scale, still kind of numbers, but a bit more, a bit less abstract, I suppose. So as kind of Manon mentioned, we're very much niche at the moment. So this is the games market. Games market at the moment, $100 billion of annualized revenue. As we've kind of we've looked at funding, so funding probably we could round it up and say about $1 billion have gone to the blockchain game sector to date. So if we want to make the comparison, that's 1% of what games does every year. And if we wanted to make an estimate of blockchain games as a sector over the last year, I guess starting really with CryptoKitties, I guess would be the kind of biggest one. We're well under $100 million, I would think. So 0.1% there. Can we visualize that? Of course we can. So 10 by 10 grid, that's the games industry. Green dot up there is blockchain games funding. And can anyone see the very, very tiny pink dot in the bottom left here? And sometimes I have to take a step back, very excited about blockchain games and what could happen and our potential to take over the world, but obviously we are a rounding error. Not to say we can't start, building up some of these $1 billion, but I think we have to take a step back and think quite seriously about how we're going to do that. I don't think it's just going to happen. Okay, when we look at the current state of the market in terms of dApps, so that's the majority of blockchain games at the moment, over 500 of these distributed dApps running on Ethereum. This is taken from dApp Radar, just one of the kind of default metrics they have. So this is basically a year's worth of activity. We're looking here at daily active users. Personally, I don't like daily active users as a metric for measuring blockchain games because that's not what it was designed to do. So daily active users comes from the mobile game space. As we all know, 99% of people playing free-to-play mobile games do not pay anything at all. So DAUs are an important retention metric for free-to-play game developers. And the reason they're important is because free-to-play game developers build these very, very strong daily retention loops. So for free-to-play game developers, it's all about keeping their audience. Then they can maybe indirectly monetize them with ads. So DAU is very important. And obviously with mobile as well, you have 2 billion people potentially as your gaming audience. Blockchain games is in every sense the exact opposite. It's a very small user base. And most of them aren't free to play. It's all kind of pay to play. Everything you do requires some sort of transaction. So if you did want to measure DAUs for blockchain games, I would times that by 100, maybe 1,000 to get a rough kind of comparison to free-to-play games, at least mobile games. But we need to come up with a better metric, I think. But here we have, we're spiking here at about 22,000 in terms of daily active users on Ethereum apps. And apart from CryptoKitties launch here, by far and away the biggest category is exchanges. So games, even as a part of dApps, they're in second place, but they're quite a long way in second place, and gambling is pretty close as well. So we're not really demonstrating a great amount of scale, I think, at the moment. Not demonstrating a great amount of success, with a couple of notable exceptions. So MetaMask. So really, this is where we are at the moment. MetaMask is a great bit of tech. I use it every day. But kind of a question I've started to ask people who I interview about blockchain games or blockchain games kind of services is how are you going to get your first 10,000 DAUs? And I don't think you're going to get that through MetaMask. I'm not seeing that. We're not seeing suddenly some great adoption of MetaMask. In fact, from everyone I talk to, MetaMask is the massive friction point. That as soon as you put up a MetaMask login, that's fine if you've got MetaMask, but if people haven't got MetaMask, they're not going to sign up for it. So a question there for you. Obviously, there's always some success stories. So CryptoKitties, a week ago or so, announced a million CryptoKitties had been created. Obviously, that shows community scale. That shows an engaged community who are breeding these things, trying to find out the traits. Obviously, it shows an engaged developer who are always bringing out kind of new kind of crazy CryptoKitties for people to get excited about. But I think it's very dangerous to base your success on the fact that CryptoKitties has done something. We see it a lot on kind of tweets, or I get press releases saying, I've just launched my DApp and we beat CryptoKitties in terms of DAUs yesterday. And then you look at it today, and obviously CryptoKitties is back in the lead. So a good example to have, but don't base your business model on the big success that has happened already. This is an interesting project. I don't know if it's had as much attention as it should have done. So this is Vigo. This is from Wax. And Wax, they're a very kind of hard-nosed business outfit, very much focused on item trading, and this is basically their version of Counter-Strike skins. So they basically built a Counter-Strike skins trading economy, not using Counter-Strike at all. They basically came up with their own technology. You basically buy keys, you open these gacha boxes, you get loads of different weapons and skins. You can't really use them in any games. It's a real trading mechanic. This is their figures. I'm not saying these are true or not. This is just something they put up. So they're saying that their transaction volume at certain points here is 4.5 times the transaction volume of the rest of all the dApps on Ethereum put together. So they're actually running on a fork of EOS for scalability. They're very anti-Ethereum, actually. But it does kind of show, if you know your audience, and I think the important thing about the Wax guys is they really know their audience because they've spent 10 years building these kind of trading systems. You can have scale. How mass market this can go, though, I would question. Another interesting one, so I think Referium are going to be talking. I know Dylan's here, so probably go and grab him. A good example of a success story when it comes to community. So this is old. This is we can see here. This is the kind of the start of the year, and when Referium was doing its ICO. So it starts off down here, less than 10,000 people. This is registered to their website. Obviously, we can see token sales have driven this up to now over 500,000. I don't know quite where they are at the moment, but this is. I like this kind of stuff. If I was running a business, I like this kind of graph. I'm not entirely sure what the long-term plan for Referium is, so maybe I do need to talk to Dylan later on and find that out. But it's much easier to have a product and a vision for your product when you've got 500,000 people have registered to it. I think a lot of times blockchain games kind of companies have very good ideas, but they don't have scale and they can't really think how they're going to get scale, and that's a big problem. Interesting to point out here, these are the latest figures I got from the website. So over 500,000 people have registered to the website, but only kind of 10% have gone in through MetaMask, which I think is what this wallet holders kind of thing is. So still a small percentage of kind of using the blockchain elements of this project. So typical hockey stick, where are we? I think we're definitely here. We're definitely tinkering. How quickly this kind of takeoff can happen is a matter for conjecture and argument in the bar later. This is not what I think will happen. This is kind of some trajectories I think could happen that make sense to me at the moment. So here we are at the moment, maybe 10,000 DAUs. In a couple of years' time, I think PC is quite important. We're starting to see some Unreal 4 client games. That may take off, that may not. Definitely this item trading esports scenario, I think, is very strong in terms of blockchain game services. And we can start to see this is obviously just timesing it by 10, but I think we can start to see this kind of scale. Where the surging growth happens, we get up to 1 million DAUs, this is mobile. So I think that the big kickoff point for blockchain games for me is how quickly mobile comes into play. Obviously, there's issues here around Google and Apple and how they allow people to play within their ecosystems. But I've been surprised, actually, how aggressive some mobile free-to-play games companies are looking to get into blockchain. So why VW Beetle? Good question. So one thing that I think is interesting is looking to kind of retrofit blockchain services and features into existing games. So the reason I've got VW Beetle is obviously VW just announced they were stopping production of the second version of this, but this car's basically been in production since 1938. It's basically indestructible. I don't know if you've heard of something called the Lindy effect. The Lindy effect basically says if something's been around for a long period of time, it's probably going to be around for a bit longer. This is a great example of the Lindy effect. And when it comes to blockchain games in particular, I see a lot of game developers passionate about making a great game. It's all going to be all fantastic, all going to be new, it's all going to be blockchain. And I just kind of think, even if this wasn't blockchain, if you had this new game, how would it compete with a Call of Duty or an Overwatch or a Battlefield, But if you've got an existing product that you can maybe add blockchain into, I think that's a much better play. And we are seeing this. So 2 very quick examples, both mobile. This is the Sandbox. So the Sandbox has been around for about a decade now. It's a mobile game, a user-generated experience. Started off in 2D. This is the new 3D voxel version that's coming, and it's basically you think of it as a Minecraft on the blockchain or a Roblox. There's a voxel editor. People can create these little characters, trade them in a marketplace, and then drop them in their sandbox and play games. It may work, it may not, but one thing we do know is the sandbox has been downloaded by tens of millions of players on mobile, and that gives it a good start. Even more crazy in my mind, I don't know if any of you, probably cricket not so big in France, but Stick Cricket Super League, a pretty big mobile game, about 500,000 DAUs, and not the game I thought was going to be aggressively attacking coming to blockchain, but it is. So they're ICOing, they're retrospectively fitting basically a blockchain item marketplace into their existing game, and then they're going to bring this new Super League version out for April next year, which is when the Indian Premier League, which is the biggest event in world cricket, kind of starts. A very casual audience. They're hiding the blockchain. Most people will just play this game without knowing the blockchain's in there, but this game is going to be played by millions of people. So this is BitCrystals, and I did a survey, and I always found this fascinating. Don't think we kind of understand really who our players are at the moment in terms of blockchain games. So they asked the question: have you purchased or traded items over the last 12 months? Less than half said yes, and this is from a blockchain game. If you go to the BitCrystals site, there's a whole big survey on this, so it's definitely worth looking at. And if they ask them why haven't you done this? I don't have the money. But actually, what's more kind of interesting, I think, is it's too complex and there's not enough benefits. If there were benefits, people have the money. So people are saying I don't have the money. What they really mean is don't have the benefits. So a big education project to happen here. And here we are, going to bang on a bit about community now. So community, I think community and blockchain play really well together, and I'm actually looking down the schedule. I'm really happy that there's going to be quite a few talks and panels about community, because I think community is the thing we don't talk about enough about in blockchain. Because blockchain, community is all about a shared stake in success. Blockchain is all about building tokenized economies where your engaged fan base are rewarded and then become more engaged, and they bring their friends along, and you start to build a very kind of tight community around your game. This is a great quote. So this guy is called Jon Jordan. He worked at Activision Blizzard for a long time working on Call of Duty games. Then he set up a studio called Seismic, who just quite recently released Marvel Strike Force, a really good free-to-play mobile game. And then they just got bought by Niantic Lab, the company obviously behind Pokemon Go. I have no idea what they're doing in blockchain, but he keeps turning up to conferences, so he's doing something. And this is from Helsinki. He was in Helsinki a couple of weeks ago for blockchaingamer.biz. And he was talking about, blockchain, games isn't broken. Blockchain isn't going to come and fix games because it doesn't need to. But what the gamers actually want? They don't really want better games. They don't want more games. They want a bigger stake in their games. And this comes to community. This is blockchain items giving ownership. And I think this was a quote that really kind of jumped out at me. So we are seeing this idea now coming to the fore of item ownership and item interoperability. Best example always is CryptoKitties and Kittyverse. So Kittyverse is kind of great because it's kind of an emerging thing that's happened. CryptoKitties is obviously the most successful blockchain game. Lots of people have got kitties. You can breed them, but then not a lot else you can do. So what's happened, other developers have created other games that you can use your CryptoKitties in. So Kitty Hat, Kitty Racer, Kitty Battle, there's loads of them now. And so now there's this idea that some of these third-party games can get the seal of approval and become part of the Kittyverse. This is a great example of what blockchain is all about. Developers emerging and coming out and supporting an ecosystem. Here's Gabby. I said, let's put this one in. So Auto, we're going to be talking, and they've been banging on for a long time now, this item-first economy. Obviously, they're not the only company doing this. There's people like Engine and Gamer Token, but there's I think, a very strong groundswell of people, going for items as this kind of low-hanging fruit, something that can engage a community and can build value. Here's OpenSea. So I mentioned OpenSea. This is just it's a kind of browser-based marketplace. It's interesting, down here you can basically, they just pull all the data from all the dApps that are out there, so we can see CryptoKitties there are over 1 million CryptoKitties out there, because OpenSea can see. But we can see, talking about scale, Gods Unchained is the next one down, less than 80,000 items. That game's actually not live yet, but we can see there's a big difference here, talking about items. But there is something, always as a journalist, there's always some fly in the ointment, and I do kind of worry a little bit. We talk a lot about scarcity. and how that drives value, but it doesn't. Scarcity does not drive value. You need context to drive value. Scarcity needs to be there, but you need community to create the context. I could make a game with one item in it, and it would be scarce, but no one would care less because there's no community. So this is what's driving value. I mean, this is why community is so important. And a quote that kind of in recent kind of weeks has really kind of come to me, and I've written some articles about this, is from Oscar Wilde. So he's talking about people knowing the price of everything. I think in blockchain, certainly people like me who spend a lot of time looking at token prices and stuff, we spend a lot of time on the price of things. How much is this crypto kitty sold for? But do we understand the value? Obviously, value is much harder to work out and to put a number on. But value is really where we need to be. So here we are, some very active men. And in the blockchain sector, game sector, these kind of people, these kind of speculators, they'll always be there. And I think they're good for the market. They provide liquidity. They probably ask the difficult questions. But you're not going to build a thriving game economy or a service economy with these guys. These are the guys who you're going to want for the long term. These are the guys who are going to give you feedback, who are going to help you when times are bad, who are going to bring their friends along and build community. So kind of rounding up here, and kind of going back, I guess, to free-to-play mobile games, which is where I kind of anchor a lot of my thinking from. So free-to-play revolutionized mobile games, but it didn't do it in a way really that a lot of gamers liked, and it didn't do it in a way that a lot of actually mobile game developers liked. But it worked because it made money, so everyone just said, well, this is what works now, we go with it. For blockchain gaming to take off in the same way as free-to-play mobile games, it has to be gamer-led. It has to be, the gamers have to be educated in why this works for them, and it has to work for them. It can't be some kind of bait or switch thing going on with the value of tokens or items. We have to be gamer-led on this one. And this is, for me, for anyone in the blockchain game sector, either making games or services, it's this sweet spot between monetization, which obviously we need to make money to continue companies going, but we need to create value. The two are linked, but the two are not the same. Value is not necessarily about money. So that's me done. There's my email there. The slide deck will be available on LinkedIn if anyone wants it. I'm around for the next 2 days. If anyone wants to tell me I was wrong or pat me on the back and say well done. Other than that, thank you very much.